poetry, you can trace the history of human heart, says Billy Collins. We here at this online edition of Kritya International Poetry Festival are then not only witnessing but also creating the history of our heart's resilience and fortitude in times of pandemic. With this sense of resilience and hope, dear friends, I invite you all to day 7, session 1 of Kritya International Poetry Festival. आप सबका हार्दिक दिल से स्वागत है. I would now like to introduce our guest poets of this session. Sanket Mhatre from Mumbai, India. Vaishnavi Rao from Bangalore, Karnataka.
Hello.
Smitha Sehgal from Calicut in Kerala. Shobhana Kumar from Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu.
Hello.
Our guest poet, Katarina from Montenegro, Southeastern Europe, is likely to join us in the middle of the session. And we also have Barkat from Baluchistan, who is not here among us because of internet issues in his country, but nonetheless, he has sent us his poems to share with you with love. The festival director, Rati Saxena ji, to kindly come and say a few words.
Namaskar. Welcome to this session of Kritya. Now, already, this is the 8th day, 7 days past. We have 2 sessions daily and wonderful sessions. As you may know that Kritya was started in 2005 and it was the first nomadic poetry festival. We used to go to different part of India. You may know that India has 28 official languages. So we wanted to go to the languages. We highlighted the languages, like when we went to Jammu Kashmir, we celebrated Dogri. Then when we have gone to Punjab, we have celebrated Punjabi. So like Mysore, the Kannada, and then Wardha, Hindi, Nagpur, Maharashtra, and Kerala, Malayalam. Internationally also, we want to invite the poets from different countries with the different small languages who write in this languages other than languages like other than English and French. Yes, we invite the English and French poet also, but like we invite Estonian poets, Vietnamese poets, and from different languages. So this was our aim, Kritya. Moreover, Kritya does not like to sit or present in a stage and read poetry for hi-fi classical society. From 2015 onward, we were going to orphanage, old age homes, schools, colleges, hospitals, prisons, villages. We were going to people with our poets and poetry. Poetry is for them because we should reach to them. In this pandemic time, Kritya was continuously doing or working for poetry therapy. In 2020, we had 10 days festival with 200 poets, more than 200 poets around the world, but it was recorded video festival. Then we had 3 days Central America Poetry Festival, because Central America also have many languages which were eaten by Spanish, but they are bringing back their languages, and but even though they write in Spanish, their Spanish slang is different, their poetry is different. So we have wanted to highlight, because Central America we know only by their prisons. When we see the crowded, overcrowded prison, like 200, 300 inmates in one small cage, we remember Central America. And we do not know poetry blossom at that land. Then we had 75 Kritya talks, in which we talk to musicians and dancers, singers, classical singers, ballet dancers, like theater ballet, modern ballet dancers from Russia, and from around the world, from and historians like Egypt historian talk to us, and then even the different languages, different places, geographical situations. Moreover, and even we talk about the economy uh, and like journalists and not politicians, but about politics. Last month was terrific in our country. We had very bad memory of that month, and we wanted to heal us, ourselves, our souls. We don't want to forget, but we want to heal. And that is how we came here in another session of Poetry Festival. This is 10 days Poetry Festival. Today is the 8th day, first session. And Shelly is from Brazil. That is the beauty of these festivals because internet has given this opportunity that Shelly is from the Brazil is taking care of this festival. Yesterday, she has taken care of the another session, and most of them were international poets. And here we are having the national, very strong, young to mature poets. So, Shelley, over to you. Please start your session and enjoy the poetry as therapy. So, best wishes. Thank you very much.
These sessions are very enjoyable because, as you rightly said, it's therapy, and we need therapy in these desperate times. I really hope that we have a receding wave of pandemic, and I really hope that it doesn't come back. I hope everyone here is vaccinated and everyone is doing well. So now let's start. Let's begin. Our first guest poet for today is Sanket Mhatre from Mumbai, India. He writes poetry in English and Marathi. He has been invited to read at several literary festivals across India, such as Kala Ghoda Arts Festival, Poets Translating Poets, Goa Arts and Literature Festival, and Jaipur Literature Festival. Sanket Mhatre has also created something very interesting called Kavita Cafe, a YouTube channel that combines cinematic vision with visual poetry. And today, Sanket will read to us his poems in Marathi. Sanket, over to you, please.
Hello. Um, First of all, really, thank you so much for inviting me to Kritya International Poetry Festival. Today I'm going to read two of my poems in Marathi. But before I do that, I really want to thank Rati Saxena and all the makers and all the entire team of Kritya International Poetry Festival for a very simple reason that today in this time of pandemic, I think such a movement is really necessary because there are so many voices around us, and these voices need to be heard. More often than not, these voices are not just voices but healers talking to us. They're making sense of this time, they're making sense of this pandemic, they're making sense of our past, present, and most importantly, our future. And they're talking about our future in a language of hope and optimism. So I think all of us as poets should come together. And this is really a necessity for all of us to kind of share our voices, to understand where we are in this time of age, and what exactly are we going to contribute as poets. Kritya as a movement is coming forward in this such a difficult time. And then once again, it's trying to unify all the poets who are completely scattered all over the world, but who are talking in just one language, the language of hope. So I'm really glad that I became a part of this initiative, and I'm adding my voice to so many voices which are truly trying to save this world from this pandemic through our own poetry. So thank you so much for inviting me. Today I'm going to read two of my poems in Marathi, and I believe Shelly will read their translation in English. So I'll begin with my first poem, which is known as Ata Nisarga. Uh, Basically, you would understand. I'll just quickly contextualize that so I can move on to that. We are seeing a lot of catastrophes affecting our world, and I think that there's a reason behind it. I think that God is angry with us, and why is He angry with us is all this poem is about. So I'll read the first poem called Ata Nisarga. Ata Nisarga. आता निसर्ग कुठल्याही क्षणी गोष्टी आपल्या हातात घेईल. आता निसर्ग कुठल्याही क्षणी गोष्टी आपल्या हातात घेईल. येईल कुठल्याही क्षणी वादळ, येईल कधीही सुनामी. येईल कुठल्याही क्षणी वादळ, येईल कधीही सुनामी. नद्यांनाही पूर येईल किंवा भूकंप येईल आणि तडे जातील पृथ्वीच्या आत्म्याला. नद्यांनाही पूर येईल किंवा भूकंप येईल आणि तडे जातील पृथ्वीच्या आत्म्याला. का? कारण जेरुसलेम मधल्या त्या लहान मुलांच्या 2 डोळ्यांच्या मधोमध जेव्हा बंदूक रोखून धरली हात ट्रिगरवर, तेव्हा तो एवढंच बोलला, वर गेल्यावर देवाला तुमचं नाव सांगेन. वर गेल्यावर देवाला तुमचं नाव सांगेन. मानवतेवर एवढं भीषण कधीच कोणी थुंकलं नव्हतं. मानवतेवर एवढं भीषण कधीच कोणी थुंकलं नव्हतं. त्यामुळे कारणं शोधू नका, घड्याळं बंद पडली की. कारणं शोधू नका, घड्याळं बंद पडली की. मुकाट्यानं, अगदी मुकाट्यानं झोपी जा. तुमच्या देहाला त्या लहान मुलाची हाक समजून. तुमच्या देहाला त्या लहान मुलाची हाक समजून.
Wow, Sanket. This poem in English, titled Flash, is translated by Rochelle Potker. Now, in any instance, nature will take away the controls from our hands. At any moment will come a storm, come a tsunami. Rivers will flood or be lambasted by earthquakes, and fissures will form over the earth's soul and surface. Because in Jerusalem, because in Jerusalem, that small boy, when hounded with a gun's barrel between his 2 eyes, a finger on the trigger, said just this much: I am going to tell God everything. On humanity, never such devastation was spat. That's why don't search for reasons when clocks freeze time. Just sleep soundly, soundlessly, assuming your body is a response to the tiny boy's last cry. Sanket, second poem, please.
Thank you so much, Shelly. Thank you so much for reading it so beautifully. More than anything, I would really, really take this opportunity to thank my fellow poet and translator, Rochelle Potker, for translating such beautiful verses. Not just this poem, but my next poem, which talks about feminism from a man's point of view, has been so beautifully and so beatifically translated by Rochelle. My second poem is a take about feminism, but I'm talking about feminism from a completely different perspective. I'm talking about feminism from the point of view of a man, and what does it mean for a man when he sees all of this injustice which is created by men on women. So I think it's really time for men to speak up against all of this and to really, really change the narrative. When it comes to standing up for women, because I truly believe that feminism means equality for both. So I think when we start looking at it from this lens, it is of absolute prime importance that we start looking at this plight of women and what really means to be a man. So this other poem of mine is known as Rand Bazari Purush. Once again, the translation will be read by Shelly. My second poem, रांड बाजारी पुरुष. या रांडबाजारी पुरुषाला एक बाई नवरा म्हणते. या रांडबाजारी पुरुषाला एक बाई नवरा म्हणते, एक ताई बाबा म्हणते, एक माई पोरगा म्हणते आणि समाज पुरुष म्हणतो. पण दुःख ह्याचं नाही वाटत. घरात असताना रांडबाजारी पुरुष फोन लावत असतो इतर बायकांना, भेटीची ठिकाणं ठरवत असतो. तो टेचात फिरतो उघडा बंब घरभर. बायको भरते रिटायरमेंट पर्यंतचे हफ्ते, सून चालवते घर खर्च. पण रांडबाजारी पुरुष बिंदास स्वतःच्या नावाची पाटी लावतो घराबाहेर. त्याचा अहम फुग्यासारखा घरभर पसरतो. रांडबाजारी पुरुष घराकडेही रांडेसारखंच बघतो, म्हणून त्याला कमी पडत असतं सतत प्रेमही, संभोगही. पण दुःख ह्याचं नाही वाटत. जेव्हा रांडबाजारी पुरुष बसतो फैलावून कुल्ले आणि पाय ठेवतो समोरच्या टेबलावर, तेव्हा कळतं की तो असाच बसत असेल इतर बायकांच्या घरातही. रांडबाजारी पुरुषाची सत्ता त्याच्या इतकीच रांडबाजारी असते हे अद्याप कळलं नाहीये कोणालाही. तो कुठल्याही बाईवर सहज ओरडून ओरबाडून घेऊन जाऊ शकतो घराची लक्तरं बॅगेत भरून, आणि तरीही दुसऱ्या दिवशी बाई घेतेच जवळ त्याला. दुसऱ्या दिवशी बाई घरात घेतेच त्याला, मुलगी हळवेपणानं बाबा म्हणतेच, सून चहा करून देते, आई वाढतेच जेवण जरा अधिक मोठ्या ताटात, घरही समजूत घालतं स्वतःची. पण दुःख ह्याचंही नाही वाटत. रानबाजारी पुरुष सर्जनशील कवीसारखा वावरू लागतो घरात. सारं काही तसंच चालू राहतं. प्रश्नही तसेच हवेत तरंगतात. नात्यांचे सापळे तसेच कोरडे पडतात. आणि मग रानबाजारी पुरुष बाई, ताई, माई, घर, संस्कृती, प्रेम ह्यांना एक एक करून गॅलरीत उभा करतो दररोज संध्याकाळी. दुःख ह्याचं वाटतं. दुःख ह्याचं वाटतं.
Sanket, I want to say thank you to you for writing this poem. Let me just read the poem now. The brothel bound man. A woman refers to him as husband. A sister calls him father. A grandma calls him son. And the society calls him a man. But the sorrow is not in this. Even at home, the brothel-bound man calls up women, making appointments for the next rendezvous. He roams in the house half naked with arrogance. His wife pays the monthly installments until retirement. His daughter-in-law runs the household expenses. But the brothel-bound man without combs mounts a nameplate with his name on the house. His ego, like a balloon, keeps floating around the four walls. He looks at his own house too, as if it were a whorehouse. That's why he habitually finds inadequacies of love, of sex. But the sadness is not even in this. When the brothel-bound man sits spreading his buttock cheeks, spreading his legs on the tepoy, he must be sitting in this very way in those various women's houses. His rules of reign are as slippery and pimp-like himself. This, no one understood that to intimidate a woman, he can easily shout or scream. He can go away from home, stripping away your clothes stuffed in a bag, and then too the next day, his wife opens the door wide enough for him. His daughter tenderly calls out to him. His daughter-in-law brings him tea. His mother serves him food in the largest plate, and the household makes sense and semblance. But the anguish is not even in this. The brothel-bound man, like an empathetic poet, walks about the house and everything proceeds in the same manner. Questions too keep floating in the house like hung cadavers of dried up relations. And then the brothel-bound man exhibits wife, daughter, mother, house, culture, and love, one by one on the balcony every evening, like the house were a whorehouse. This is what is harrowing. Sanket, it's so good to see feminist men. It's absolutely because I always believe that feminism is not about creating a separate room. It's not an exclusive space. It's a space where we need people with that conscience of equal rights. So thank you so much for writing this poem. Huge pleasure to read this.
Thank you.
Now,
And just one thing, I really owe it to all the English poets that I've come in contact with. I've been reading Shobhana Kumar for the past 1 year, and she's a wonderful, delightful poet who's really helped me in my journey. And the second thing is, I would really be grateful to Rochelle, for kind of translating this poem, and for not just that, for also helping me explain what feminism is all about, and for really teaching me, all the intricacies of what really it means to be a man in a woman's world and not otherwise. So thank you so much, Rochelle, and thank you so much all the English poets in this entire journey. Thank you so much.
Okay, now Kritya International Festival is not only inclusive in terms of representation from various parts of the world, languages, but also including voices that are young and that are mature. So today we have among us a very aspiring young poet, Vaishnavi Rao. She's also a software engineer, Her poems have been published in some Indian periodicals, and her interest in literature is telling from her active involvement in the writing workshops and poetry sessions of the Literary Club, which she heads in her undergraduate university. Vaishnavi, welcome. Now the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Shelly, for inviting me. Before I begin, I would like to mention that Ratiji has organized this much-needed stage in such a sophisticated manner and has brought together poets addressing such versatile topics and bring about a sort of catharsis through poetry, as we saw with Sanket and feminism as well. So it's a really amazing thing. So I'm deeply honored to be a part of this moment despite being new to the poetry scene. Thank you, Ratiji, for giving me this opportunity. So I will be reading 3 poems in English today. And my first poem is called Block. So this poem came about after months of not being able to write because I had a huge writer's block. So it's a mixture of my frustrations at the poetry scene in English currently and how I'm not able to write. So here it goes. There's an ache in my fingers, much like the one in my heart, a honey-sweet nagging that lingers, begging me to do my part. I hate rhymes. They make my feelings sound like an 18th century corset-clad woman, restricted to imitating syllables alike, reading out like a boring sermon. Yet there is such fascination to these schemes, differing by the order of the words that couple. Honestly, freeform should be the go-to themes for young poets who wish to use spaces in double. They make their poetry look somewhat like this, with pointless spaces, they fill their books, gaining clout despite the diss. Oh, what wonderful art, my oh my. I'm loving these spaces that thousands of tree barks sacrifice their existence for. I started this out as a means to end the block in my cortex. I didn't mean to speak in rhymes or call out the bountiful space texts. Will Shakespeare be proud, or will he shrivel upon seeing this? He's been awfully quiet, though, ever since I wrote this poem. And thus, I've been set free, no longer speaking in doubles. Farewell. So that was my poem on writer's block. Now I will go on to the second one. This one is kind of special, and I will tell you at the end of it. Awaiting for you. The sweet fragrance of your perfume has faded over time. In the corner where I rest, within me grows a vacuum, deeper and darker over time, carving me hollow at your behest. Yet the memories of us, unlike the used tissues, they do not rot. Buried under my skin, in the bowels of my heart, with shallow pricks of a hairpin, in the bowels of my heart, in a pool of blood they swim. I have been by your side for 3 years, unquestioning and dutiful, supportive of your every stride for 3 years. I have been nothing but faithful. But ever since you found someone new and shiny, I lay here, wasting away, watching you as I have before, through your tears and your laughs that you now share with someone new and shiny. I collect dust and I begin to fray, my sinewy stitches tearing apart at the seams, but your new companion is here to stay, with strings perfectly intertwined to the separate chambers of your heart. The threads that hold me together are now brittle. Still, I await for you, unwavering as your favorite purse. So this I wrote as a sort of in honor for my purse that I've used for very long, and I kind of abandoned it after I found a new purse. So that was my inspiration to write this. Now I move on to my third poem. So this one is also very special to me. I'm very emotionally connected to it, and it's called Unfazed. The river banks were her homeland, loose muddy silt beneath her feet. She would travel along lanes so grand. Her hometown, her kingdom, her life. Fresh air and love as deep as the river. Long hair and aspirations blooming like flowers. The dusty village was his playground. Sand and pebbles and all his best friends. He would be out with them till sundown. His hometown, his kingdom, his life. A wealthy mustache and a taste for adventure. youthful innocence with ambitions as high as the sky. They say two states cannot coexist together. Oh, they say, one will face the other. But does it have to be that way, darling? Can't we just be? Leaving behind all that is familiar challenged her but darkened her fears. Living with discipline had made his carefree mind cold. He couldn't quit the rules, he was told. And so the rules stayed with them, haunted them, their youth spent so grim and solemn. They say two states will not coexist together. Oh, they say one will always face the other, but we do our best, darling. We just want to be. 2 decades and half a dozen more. Time has brought home wrinkles and sores. The world used to adjust to them, and now they adjust. They compromise. They don't know how, but they make it work. Lost the thirst for thrills, but never his ambition. Living 30,000 miles away, his career glistens. 2 young daughters, 2 futures to build. Staying afar, their lives he tilled, teaching the girls the pain of hard work. She fills herself with pages of poetry, the rage in her, the sadness in her, the musings he never understood. The visions of the world and her motherhood pours out of her like an overflowing sink, showing the girls the power of words. They say 2 states can never coexist. Oh, they say one just has to face the other. But we are still us, darling. We're just trying to be. So that's the end. Thank you so much.
It was such joy to listen to your poems, and especially your poem about the writer's block as a takeaway for many of us. In fact, because we all write as writers, we do face the writer's block at one point of time. Thank you so much for such lovely poetry reading. Really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Now I'd like to invite our next guest poet, Smitha Sehgal, who's a legal professional and who writes in English and Malayalam. Her poems, fiction, and book reviews have been featured in various anthologies such as Dance of the Peacock, Swarna Rekha, and 40 Under 40. Smitha, the platform is all yours.
പ്രിയപ്പെട്ടവരെ നമസ്കാരം. I am deeply grateful to Rati Saxena ji, Kritya, for giving me this opportunity to read poetry in this very distinguished platform. Her untiring efforts has brought together a confluence of language, people, and world poetry together. So with this deep gratitude, I proceed to read my poems. The first poem is a travelogue poem and a celebration of female camaraderie. The title of the poem is പവിഴക്കമ്മലുകൾ. കാതുകളിൽ തൂങ്ങിക്കിടക്കുന്ന പവിഴക്കമ്മലുകൾ മനോഹരമാണ് എന്ന് നിങ്ങൾ പറയവേ, ഞാൻ ഫാത്തിമ സോറ തലനിക്കത്തിനെ ഓർക്കുന്നു. മധ്യധരണ്യാഴിയുടെ കിരീടം വൈഡൂര്യത്തിളക്കത്താൽ സ്ഫുരിക്കുന്ന, അതിർത്തി കാക്കുന്ന ആഴങ്ങൾക്കു മീതെ ഒരു ത്രികോണപ്പട്ടമായി പറക്കാൻ വെമ്പുന്ന ഒരു കോളനിവൽകൃത രാഷ്ട്രത്തിന്റെ ചരിത്രത്തിൽ മുൻവിധിയോടെ പോകരുതെന്ന് ഞാൻ നിങ്ങളോട് പറയും. ഫ്രഞ്ചും അറബിക്കും ഇഴനെയ്ത വെളുപ്പിൽ ഫാത്തിമയുടെ മൊഴി, തവിട്ടിലെ ബിസിനസ് സൂട്ടിൽ കത്തുന്ന മധ്യവയസ്സിനെ ശാന്തമാക്കി ചന്ദ്രകിരണം കോർത്ത മാല. സിദാനെയും 2006 ലോകകപ്പിനെയും എനിക്ക് ഒരിക്കലും നഷ്ടമായിട്ടില്ലെന്ന് ഞാൻ അവളോട് പറയുന്നു. ഡൽഹിയിലെ അറ്റാട്ടുർക്ക് വീതി കാക്കുന്ന നൂറ്റാണ്ടു തികഞ്ഞ ജാമുൻ തണൽ മരങ്ങളെക്കുറിച്ചും മൊറോക്കൻ പർവ്വത നിരകളും തുണീഷ്യൻ അതിരുകളും താണ്ടി സ്വദേശമേതെന്ന് നിർണയിക്കാനാവാതെ കുഴങ്ങുന്ന ആൽബേർ കെമുവിന്റെ ആദ്യ മനുഷ്യനെ കുറിച്ചും. ഇടറിയ ഫ്രഞ്ച് കേട്ട് അവൾ പൊട്ടിച്ചിരിക്കവേ മനോഹരമായ കഴുത്തൊരു കമാനമാകുന്നു. അൾജീരിയയിലെ ഓരോ കുട്ടിയും കാൽപന്ത് കളിക്കുന്നു, സിദാൻ ആവാൻ കൊതിക്കുന്നു. അക്വിസിഷൻ സ്ഥിതിവിവര കണക്കുകളിലേക്ക് ഫാത്തിമയുടെ മൂർച്ചയുള്ള കണക്കുകൾ നീങ്ങുന്നു. അൾജിയേഴ്സ് നഗരത്തിലുടനീളം യുറാനിലേക്ക് പർവ്വനുറുങ്ങുകൾ ഇന്ദ്രനീലിമ ചൊരിയുന്ന ആകാശത്തെ സ്പർശിച്ച് പ്രണയം കുറിക്കുന്നു. നാഗരികതയുടെ വ്യാജസങ്കല്പങ്ങൾ വരച്ച അതിർത്തികൾക്ക് പിന്നോക്കം പോയി ഒളിച്ചു കഴിഞ്ഞ ബെർബറുകൾ ഇപ്പോൾ കാടിറങ്ങി വരാറില്ല. സ്കിഗ്ധ മരുഭൂവിൽ ആഫ്രിക്കൻ സൂര്യൻ തിളച്ചു തൂകവേ അവർ വേവിച്ച ഉരുളക്കിഴങ്ങും ചാറും വിളമ്പുന്നു. കടലിൽ ഒരു മീൻപിടുത്ത വാരാന്ത്യം, ബുഷാവിയിലെ പുൽത്തകിടുകളിലെ പ്രഭാതങ്ങൾ പനിനീർ പൂക്കളുടെ ഭാരങ്ങളിൽ ഒടിഞ്ഞു പോകുന്നു. കപ്പലുകൾ തുറമുഖമണയവേ കയയിലെ പാറക്കെട്ടുകൾക്ക് മീതെ അലച്ചടിക്കുന്ന തിരമാലകൾ ഉടനിവർത്തവേ ഞങ്ങൾ കടത്തീരത്ത് ബിസിനസ് സൂട്ടുകൾ ചുരുട്ടുന്നു. മെഡിറ്ററേനിയന്റെ ലവണ വിശ്വാസം ഊഴിയിൽ ചരിത്രങ്ങൾ മായ്ക്കവേ അവൾ ഒരു ജോഡി പവിഴക്കമ്മലുകളാൽ എന്നെ അനുഗ്രഹിക്കുന്നു. The second poem is, I'll read the translation of this first poem. The first poem is translation, Coral Earrings. When you say, coral earrings dangling on my earlobes are pretty, be sure I would recall Fatima Zora Talanikat. When you ask more, I would tell you not to be prejudiced by history of a colonized triangular nation, yearning to fly, bordering a turquoise Mediterranean, warp and weft of French and Arabic on her tongue, middle-age grazed by beige business suits, pearl necklace radiating calm. I tell her I never missed a World Cup where Zidane played, the headbutt of 2006, the shade of centenarian jamun trees along Delhi's Ataturk Marg, Albert Camus' first man crossing Moroccan mountains. She laughs, bobbed head thrown back, arch of a lovely neck at my stuttering French. Every child in Algeria wants to be a footballer. Fatima's sharp eyes quick to the acquisition statistics. Across Algiers city, en route Uran, mountain peaks touch the sky. Berbers have receded behind the borders drawn by fake notions of civilization. A walk by the quay, watch the ships dock in Skikda, the African sun boils and spills over. They serve boiled potatoes and gravy. A fishing weekend at sea. Bushavi mornings hang heavy beneath scent of rose gardens. As ships come home by the quay, waves rise high to open umbrella. We roll up business suits on a pristine beach. Sighing Mediterranean erases history on sand. Fatima Zora Talaniket, zesty woman. She blesses me with a pair of coral earrings. Thank you. The second poem is about a hanging lamp in St. James Cathedral in Britain. In the year 2017, during Christmas, this church in London exhibited a chandelier made of recycled refugee clothing, which was sculpted by British artist Arabella Doman. So the inspiration to the poem is this, and the poem. പള്ളി മച്ചിലെ തൂക്കുവിളക്ക് നിഴലുകളെ ആട്ടിപ്പായിക്കുന്നു. വെളിച്ചത്തിന്റെ അടിയേറ്റ് പുളഞ്ഞ് ഓടി ഒളിക്കുന്ന നിഴലുകൾ വാതിൽ പാളികളുടെ വിടവിൽ ജനാലക്കു പിന്നിൽ മുഖമമർത്തി ഒളിഞ്ഞു നോക്കുന്നു. അവയുടെ കണ്ണിൽ നിറഞ്ഞു തുളുമ്പിയത് മ്യാൻമാറിലെ അതിർത്തികളിലെ ചോരാത്ത മഴയും ചങ്ങാടങ്ങൾ മുങ്ങിപ്പോയ മധ്യധരണ്യാഴിയുമാണ്. ഉറങ്ങിക്കിടന്ന ഐലാൻ കുർദിയുടെ ഓമനത്തമാണ്. മുഖത്തെ ചേറടയാളങ്ങൾ ചരിത്രത്തിന്റെ പരാജയങ്ങളാണ്. ശരീരത്തിലെ തിണർപ്പുകൾ വിഭജിക്കപ്പെട്ട ഭൂമിയുടെ ഘനമാനങ്ങളുടെ അളവുകോലാണ്. പലായനങ്ങളുടെ കണക്ക് കൂട്ടലിൽ തീരങ്ങളിൽ അടിഞ്ഞുകൂടിയ മൃതശരീരങ്ങൾ പുതിയ വെളിച്ചത്തിലേക്ക് കാൽ വെക്കവേ ഉരിഞ്ഞെറിഞ്ഞ തോലുകൾ പെരുക്കിയെടുത്ത് ആരോ ഓർമ്മകൾ തൂക്കി ചമയം പിടിപ്പിച്ച പള്ളിമച്ചിലെ വിളക്ക് നമ്മെ അസ്വസ്ഥരാക്കുന്നു, ഭയഭീതരാക്കുന്നു. കാരണം അവ നമ്മുടെ കാപട്യങ്ങളുടെ കണ്ണാടിയാണ്, കുംഭസാരങ്ങളുടെ കണക്കുകളാണ്, കരിന്തിരി കെട്ട വിളക്കിന്റെ തേങ്ങലുകളാണ്. I will request Shelly to please read translation of poem 2.
Translation in Malayalam. The Chandelier of St. James Cathedral is translated by Smitha herself. The chandelier in the cathedral chases away shadows. They run and hide, beaten mercilessly by light. Hiding behind the gap of door panels and windows, they peek. Eyes spilling over with rains by the crossing of Myanmar and Mediterranean Sea where rafts sank. Scars on their face at the failures of history. Innocence of the face of sleeping. Aylan Kurdi. Wounds on their bodies. Dimensions of a divided earth in the net total of escapades, and immigration. There accumulates on the shores of time dead bodies. Peeling away the past, they enter new light. Someone picks up their abandoned skins and decorates the chandelier in the cathedral. All of that upsets us because it is the mirror of our failures. Because it is the mirror of our failures, the net figure of our confessions. Smitha, thank you so much for these wonderful, wonderful poems. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed these poems. So now, as I said in the session yesterday, that at one point of time, what we had, the difficulties that we had on reaching the venue on time were traffic, right? Today, the difficulty we have of reaching the venue on time is the internet connectivity issues. So therefore, Katarina Sarić is not here among us. So I'm going to read her poems in translation. Katarina Sarić from Montenegro is a professor of Slavic literature and philosophy, civil rights activist, writer of socially engaged literature created for performance and theater. She has published 12 books, most of which were translated, awarded, and represented in numerous literary portals and platforms. So I'm going to read her poems in Hindi. These poems are translated by Meeta Das ji. हार्मोन्स की चोरी. मुझे अपने नवजात शिशु होने से प्यार है. सिर्फ बिछाया हुआ एक कोमल पफ जो है हल्का गुलाबी. मुझे प्यार है कविता, हस्तलिपि और टिकटों पर पिघली मोम से, और उस शर्ट से जिस पर बड़ी बिंदी बिल्कुल बीच में है, जिसे सहेज कर रखा है तुम्हारे लिए जब तुम यहां होंगे. मैं चाहती हूं अपना नाव बोस्का ले जाऊं और राजकुमारी जेलेना की तरह लिखूं. मुझे लेटना भी पसंद है और सिंकों से बनी वो टोपी जिसका गोलाकार लंबा किनारा है, और हाथ से बनी फीतों की कढ़ाई, और अधोवस्त्र छाती में लेवेंडर की खुशबू. किंतु तब मुझे सबसे ज्यादा अच्छा लगता है जब मैं अपने आप से ऊब जाती हूं और बन जाती हूं नवजात शिशु और चुरा लेती हूं आपके हार्मोन्स, और मैं खुद को लात मारने लगती हूं अलमारी के नीचे और धूल को स्क्रैपबुक पर गिरने देती हूं. मैं पसीना वाला थैला और हेडफोन्स को पहन लेती हूं और मैं सांप के शरीर में बदल जाती हूं, नए पन्नों के खुलने से पहले, जिस पर अपनी एड़ी से पूर्ण विराम लगाने का मुझे भरोसा है. और मैं किसी को जवाब नहीं देती और मौज और मस्ती में घूमती फिरती हूं. मैं रस्सी को फेंकती हूं, मवेशियों को चराती घूमती हूं, और मैं हर किसी से परिचित हूं जब मैं अपने कुल्हों के बल लेटकर आराम फरमाती हूं हर शहर में एक प्रेमी के साथ, और जब मुझे सच में परवाह नहीं है कि तुम कहां होंगे. नेक्स्ट पोएम इस अजब कविता. इसका अनुवाद भी मीता दास जी ने किया है. आई विश हम इन कविताओं को कैटरीना की मॉन्टेनेग्रो लैंग्वेज में सुन सकते, मगर नॉनदलेस वी हैव द हिंदी ट्रांसलेशन. अजब कविता. यह अच्छा है कि मुझे हंसते रहने जैसा महसूस होता है, और बगैर किसी कारण ही मुझे केवल गाने, नाचने और कूदने जैसा महसूस होता है. इसलिए नहीं कि मैं फुर्तीली हूं या कि चंचल हूं, परंतु इसके विपरीत. जबकि आप इतने संगीन और धूरस हो, एक असली डरावने मानव हमेशा एक उस तरह के ब्लेड पर बस जैसे कि यूं ही रो लिए. कौन सही है और कौन गलत, क्या कर सकते हो, क्या नहीं कर सकते, पर शायद मेरे विचार ज्यादा गहरे और वजनीय हैं. मुमकिन है अगर मैंने उन्हें जाने दिया तो तुम्हारे बैलेंस ट्रे के टुकड़े टुकड़े कर डालूंगी. ये सब बहुत हो चुका. मुझे अब कोई परवाह नहीं, बल्कि अब कोई बहस भी नहीं. यह अच्छा है जबकि ये है भी नहीं, और मेरे साथ कुछ भी गलत नहीं है, बस मेरा हंसने का मन है. There's one more poem that Katarina sent us in English translation by, this poem is titled Senseless Noise. It is translated into English from the Montenegrin language by Marina Diamond. Senseless Noise. And you will allow the sticky looks of contempt and envy born of the blemish blindness and despair piled up in the backbone and wrinkled arms. You will allow the misfortunes and torments, yours and those of the others. You will shoulder both what you have to and what the others load in your saddlebags, equally here as everywhere else in this wide world, one and the same life for everybody through and through. You will be seizing the life of the ethers. You will be seizing the life of the others, and the others will be taking it from you, ground in the same mill, till we meet our Maker, till the very end. And whoever receives a ticket to hell and whoever to heaven, you will allow everything down the water when everything and everyone flow away and leave every Tom, Dick, and Harry. But you'll remember only those silent days when all of this is over, in which you were lucky to find your own teddy, to cuddle under the covers, and everything suddenly pauses and stops, becoming a senseless noise. Now, I take the opportunity to invite our very interesting poet today, Shobhana Kumarji. She's the author of 2 collections of poetry and 6 other books, including biographies and industrial histories in South India. I'm very impressed with what she does in her everyday work. Hats off to you, Shobhana ji. In her everyday work, she runs a non-profit organization called Small Differences that works with the homeless, the elderly, and the transgender community. She also works with students in schools and colleges and facilitates workshops and special projects. Shobhana ji, the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Shelly. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. First, my gratitude to Ratiji for putting together seamless events in the wake of the pandemic. I think in the time that all of us are feeling so lonely, the internet has succeeded in bringing artists and poets and writers together. And Ratiji's endless enthusiasm to keep doing this year after year is completely remarkable. Her ability to bring poets and writers and artists from all parts of the world with just this love for the arts is something that has to be commended. So much gratitude to Kritya. Kritya is also very, very close to my heart because it was one of the first journals that published my work back in 2012. And Shelly, may I also congratulate you for such evocative readings of all the poems of the poets today. It's such a privilege and honor to be with all of you today, my friend Sanket, who I've had the opportunity to work with, and listening to Smitha, although I have read her work, and the new poet Vaishnavi. Thank you very much for this honor. So I will begin. I'm going to be reading 3 poems, and there is a translation. The first one is called How to Stop Crime, from a leaf in Party's diary, 4/12/1943. Learn to stop them midway, like pranayama. Hold them until they brim, but not over. Grow flowers. You will see how fragility can yield tenderness, each petal the result of a trigger. Pile them like unwanted linen in crevices you don't want to reach easily. Draw inspiration from women in remote desert villages who learn to make do without water and sand their used vessels. Rub that sand into wounds over and over and over again till wound meets blood meets hurt, to that one point when all pain ceases into one shoreless pulse. Note: repeat for best results. Pick the method most appropriate for different times. This was written in honor of my grandmother, and back in the 1940s, 50s, women all over the world lost so many children, and there was really no time to grieve over death and loss because you just had to go on. There was just so much to do, so many people to take care of. So this was written in honor of my grandmother. The second is a haibun I would like to read for all of you called Tongue. It's from my recent collection of haibun called A Sky Full of Bucket Lists, which was released by Red River earlier this year. Tongue. The hunger is evident. Eyes grab words with the hesitance of a toddler's first steps. Then the sure pace of an elementary school goer. Within a few weeks, the language flows in the veins almost like muscle memory. She pulsates with the eagerness of meeting a long-lost childhood friend. Memory. What do sparrows sound like? Memory. What do sparrows sound like? The deliciousness of rediscovery is like an addiction. Every spare moment is spent fondly tracing the script in a book of fiction. Petrichor evokes nostalgia. The birds sound like they too have embraced this new orchestra of lyric and syllable. Meter falls in step with the lilt of leaves on the trees. The heart now knows that all roads come home. Polyglot, he wonders which to propose in. Polyglot, he wonders which to propose in. This poem was, this haibun is especially for with a delicious orchestra of different languages that we've been privy to listen to in this Kritya festival. So it's for that. The third poem I'm going to read is called Just Married, and it is extremely special to my heart because this was personally picked and translated by Gulzar in his Gulzarji in his monumental collection, 365 poems a day for the entire year. So I'm very, very, very honored to present this work to you, English, and I'm also delighted that Shelly will be reading the translation by Gulzarji later. Just Married. 1. There is a new mark on my forehead, a bright red trail that spells the end of one journey and the beginning of another. Bloody ties, severed and recreated. My toe rings gleam and speak of the confines within which I must now live, benevolent, gentle, obedient, giving, but never asking. Around my neck are heavy lockets to remind me that this bond now is divinity personified, and I, its worshipper. Strange as it may be, all I am asked is to forget me. 2. This new home that I must make mine is made up of different smells. The sun dawns a little later here. Its rays take their time to penetrate thick curtains in the sleeping souls they hold within. Spices scream at every bite, but serve well to camouflage my heart's longing and my eyes' welling. The warmth within is different too, even when I nestle myself in my beloved's arms. Time will take its time, my grandmother says, before I can call this home, if I ever will. 3. The headiness of jasmine flowers, imprints of crushed henna leaves, fade with every passing day, until I wake one morning to find that my body's yearnings have found a home. My soul will have to wait. 4. I am now used to him, his tastes and preferences, even the way he likes his tea, or how he likes me to lie with him. I look twice in the mirror before he comes home, tuck my flaws behind my ears, powder those blemishes, and perfume my daily sweat. I can tell by the way he crinkles his nose that the evening meal is a disaster, but I must make a mental note to erase the recipe, my favorite one, from my home. I must hush the moaning of my maternal uncle and celebrate his promotion instead. And when I wear my favorite pink silk, he frowns and says he hates it. Thank you very much. Over to you, Shelly. Thank you. Thank you for the honor.
Shobhana ji, goosebumps, I must say. Shobhana ji, you only sent me the first and the last part of this poem in translation. I don't have the middle part, but I'll read what you have because it's definitely worth to read. Okay. Shadi. निशान एक नया लगा है माथे पर, चमकती एक सुर्ख छाप है, बताता है कि मेरा एक सफर तमाम हुआ और दूसरे की इब्तिदा हुई, कटी है खून की गरही और नई लगी। ये बिचवा पैर का बताता है हदें मेरी, कि वो सभी जिनमें जीना है, हमेशा खैर ख्वाह नर्म ताबेदार, देते रहना मांगना नहीं। गले में मंगल सूत्र एक सोने का जेवर, सुनाता है रूहानी है ये बांध और मैं पुजारी हूं। अजीब है जिसे भुलाने के लिए कहा गया है, अजीब है कि जिसे भुलाने के लिए कहा गया है मुझको मैं ही हूं। मैं उसकी आदी हो गई हूं अब, पसंद और स्वाद। चाय किस तरह पसंद है और किस तरह से उसके साथ लेटना मेरा। मैं आईने में झांकती हूं 2 दफा, मैं आईने में झांकती हूं 2 दफा, वो घर पर लौटता है जब। लटें अरस के कान में सवार लेती हूं, लटें अरस के कान में सवार लेती हूं, पसीने पर छिड़क के पाउडर दबा के गंध। मैं उसके नाक सकोड़ने से सब समझ जाती हूं, मैं उसके नाक सकोड़ने से सब समझ जाती हूं। लगा है बेस्वादी खाना शाम का, और याद भी रखूं मैं भूल जाऊं मेरे दिल पसंद खाने को। गुजर गए हैं मामा तो दबा के रखूं सिसकियां, खुशी मनाऊं प्रमोशन मिली है। पहन लूं गर गुलाबी रेशमी पसंद का, पहन लूं गर गुलाबी रेशमी पसंद का, तो माथे को सुकेड़ कर वो कहते हैं आई हेट इट। Shobhana ji, thank you so much for your beautiful, lovely poems. Really enjoyed these poems. Our next poet, the last poet of the session, Barkat Hoth, is not here. As we know that how it is in Baluchistan, and so he sent us the poems in advance. Barkat Hoth is also popularly known by his pen name Barjan Baloch. He's also a poet and singer. The Hoth family where he belongs to, the descendants of Prince Punah Hoth, famously known from the eternal love story Sasui Punah. He has published poetry, 2 published poetry books, Shairi and Ghazals, namely Bekar Jazbe and Aansuon Ka Ek Katra Ek Mutti Khak. He's also penned a few films in his Baluchi language. Now I request Satya Saxena ji to kindly play his poems for us.
गज़ल का मतला अर्ज़ है। किसी ने वो नज़र पाई नहीं है, किसी ने वो नज़र पाई नहीं है, कि ये वुसअत है गहराई नहीं है, कि ये वुसअत है गहराई नहीं है। न देगी फैज़ वो नेकी भी तुझको, न देगी फैज़ वो नेकी भी तुझको, अगर नीयत में अच्छाई नहीं है। दोबारा एक ही धोखे में आना, दोबारा एक ही धोखे में आना, हमाकत है वो दानाई नहीं है। तू क्या देखेगा तफरीके तराजू, तू क्या देखेगा तफरीके तराजू, तेरी आंखें हैं बीनाई नहीं है। तू ए तालिब तलब में मतलबी है, तू क्यों मतलूब सच्चाई नहीं है। तिजारत मौत की और नाम खिदमत, तिजारत मौत की और नाम खिदमत, सितम है ये मसीहाई नहीं है। तेरी दौलत दुआएं हैं वफा है, तेरी दौलत दुआएं हैं वफा है, तू बरजान हाथ में ताई नहीं है। बरजान बलोच गज़ल पेश खिदमत है। क्या करें जब ख्याल यार आए, हम न चाहें भी बार बार आए। तेरी चाहत का कर्ज था वाजिब, आज वो भी सनम उतार आए। जब्र और वो भी इस सलीक़े से, जो भी आए हैं ज़ेर बार आए। तुमको मुझसे ये क्यों तगर्रुज़ है, हम शबे गम कहाँ गुजार आए। पाबा जौला हूँ आज जिंदा में, क्या करूँ कि मुझे करार आए। हम तो शौक़े विसाल में यारो, शहर खूबा से सूएदार आए। क्या कहें क्या है ये शिकस्त जुनूं, क्या कहें क्या है ये शिकस्त जुनूं, बाज़िए ज़ीस्त थी सो हार आए। तूर जो दस्तरस से बाहर था, हम वहाँ भी गए पुकार आए। है अबस और कुछ नहीं बरजान, टूट कर जिसको जिस पे प्यार आए। बरजान बलोच, पिशन, ईरान। डॉक्टर रति सक्सेना साहिबा की एक हिंदी कविता का अनुवाद या तर्जुमा या रजाक बलूची ज़बान में मैं आपकी खिदमत में पेश करता हूँ। बेचकंदग यक इबाबते के दोबर बेचकंदग अल्लमी नयंत, अलहाना बिगर दां सरगाला के सूजनाकें ज़ेमुलानी हाजतिंत। बेचकंदगे अलहान वाजा हुदाए दिलगोशा वती नेमगा तर्रीनित, दां मद्दान मद्दाना सरगाला रसगा रंद, आ गो वहदा हम ग्रंच बित। बेचकंदगे सरगाल ज़ेमुर चा दुचापिया रंद बुंगेज बित, केचा लुंटानी जागहा एन्ना चा दीदगा सरकशित। बेचकंदग के यक इबाबते हमा दुरुस्तें दुबर न लूटतगें, दुआयां नि पैमाइंत। पा हमा बदवाहानी नामा के मनी बेचकंदगा सेल्लो हराब लेकंत, के मनी बेचकंदगा सेल्लो हराब लेकंत। मिन्नत।
So this was actually fantastic session. It is very strong and very good session. Sanket does not have very good internet, and that is why he has left. Means he log out automatically. He's not there. But I want to introduce these poets in a different light from the Kritya. Shobhana was the first person who asked me almost 3 months back, Ratiji, next time whenever you have poetry festival, I want to work too, but with you. But this is pandemic time. She gave me the theme letter, and after that she got ill. And I had a really I was not able to communicate with her because she was hospitalized. She was in a very difficult position. I am thankful to God that at least she is here to read her poetry. So she was from last year onward. She was saying that Ratiji, I want to work with you. She has given me lovely lines for peace almost for 2.5 months back, and I was feeling that why these people are disappearing, because everyone has problem. Even though if you don't have corona, you have many problems. And even I was facing, I was down with fever for this herpes and all for almost 1 month. So I'm happy that Shobhana could come back, and again she has not come out of the disease, pain, and sorrow. Still, their love for poetry shows that what poetry means to us, these poets. I talk about the Shelly. She was continuously for 1 year on bed, 1 year. And I was afraid of asking her, Shelly, I need some help. I tell you that Kritya does not have single money, single paisa donation, or we don't take any support from anyone from 2015 onward, because before that we asked for government, and then after that when we felt like we are cheated, then we are not taking. So we are not paying to anyone, so we have to depend on the people or poets who really love poetry and who work for Kritya for poetry only. And really, they work better than people who are paid off. Believe me, poetry has a power. I was afraid of asking Shelly. And Shelly joined me only 15 days back. When I asked her, she said, क्यों नहीं रति जी, मैं आऊंगी ना, मैं आऊंगी, are you sure? हाँ मैं आऊंगी ना. And Shelly introduced me 2-3 more people and poets who were fantastic, who are doing fantastic job in this festival. So they are not only poets, they are poetry activists. They forget about their body pain and come here. Smitha wrote me a letter long back and I lost her letter. When I was searching in this darkness that nobody's around me, I searched for her letter and then I call and I say, she is an advocate in a government home. And then she said, आप जो कहेंगी मैं कहूंगी, and she is from Malayali. I'm happy that she married to a Punjabi, but she is still Malayali in heart. It is like that Malayali is always Malayali wherever he goes, whether even he goes to moon, he is always Malayali. So he has written beautiful poetry. She has written beautiful poetry, and in spite of all her very heavy work, office work, she is with Kritya, with the poetry. Vaishnavi's story is very interesting. She did not talk about the third poem she read here. She has written this poem about her parents. Her father from Karnataka and mother, of course, she is Kannagi, but she belonged to Banaras, North India. So that culture differences were there, and the way mother and father not only taken care of the family, but the whole family means parents, in-laws, and this has happened here because her mother could not join because her Vaishnavi's grandmother is dead, and because Usha shared this poem to me, and then I said that Usha, Vaishnavi is better poet than you, and that is how Vaishnavi came in. She's so young, but she is real poet. She worked. Congratulations, Vaishnavi, you are youngest one. and you're really a good poet. Sanket, I'm not able to talk. He is a very eminent poet. I talked about the Barkat. You know that Barkat belonged to the family which is famous for the love songs, Punni, Mahiwal, and all these love songs. Heer Ranjha and those love poems were from the Afghanistan. And it is in Baluchistan, but that part of Baluchistan is in Iran. The two parts are there. One is in Pakistan and one is Iran. I met him in Iran, and he was talking about pain for his Baluchi people, his brothers and all, who left in Pakistan. And somehow, Barkat, after many years, he could continue the Urdu. He might have been speaking in Baluch language because he belonged to actually, that is the king's family. The olden days, Baluchistan was a very big country, and he belonged to a king family. He lost his eyes, but his voice is so strong. And then the moment I always wanted to invite him in India, but I have limitations. But that he remembers the Urdu Jaban, and he writes in Baluchistan, and whenever I ask him, he sent his voice because he can't see. Somebody has to, because he sent the voice, and always Edina makes film out of his voice. So I thank to Edina also here, and this is the Barkat Hoth, from the poet from the family which is famous for the love stories, and the poet who loves his country, who still loves the language, who still loves India, because Baluchistan was very close to India at a time emotionally. That is why he has not forgotten Urdu. So I am thankful to Barkat. Moreover, Katarina, I do not know. I expect poets to try it because we take so much pain, and they should try it. If they are not able to come, or they feel that there will be a problem, they could send us the video. So, of course, she is a strong poet, but I would be happy to listen her in her voice. Anyway, thank you, Meeta ji, for translation. Thank you, Shelly, for reading her poetry. But still, there is something, we need some discipline in poetic word also, because we are spending 18 hours in a day to run this festival for almost 2 months. So, friends, thank you very much. Thanks a lot. I'm happy because this session is not only the poets who are Christians. I always say that we are Christians. So these are the Christians also. Thank you, audience. Thanks a lot. Long live poetry.